In the tram world, it happens sometimes that to keep the gauge of the railroad tracks, we install spacer bars. And we do this to extend the life of the railroad sleepers, you know, this piece of wood. And also, for example, on places where there's a lot of stresses on the rail itself due to the sunshine expansion, yes. And then it can happen sometimes that the rails start to buckle. And to be sure that the distance between the two rails, the gauge, is correct, we install these bars. And installing these things is not really rocket science. If this is a piece of rail, and it really is, all you have to do is drill a hole here, and of course on the other rail 1 meter further, and put the bar between two, as you can see here in this footage I took last winter. Here we are installing one in a railroad crossing, and of course it's way easier to install just one piece of iron, this bar of course, than break out everything and replace the sleepers, other ties, pieces of wood.
Avec le tarmac qu'il y a partout, c'est costaud. Non? Donc un bon acte. Allô? Allô?
Now, as you could see, the installment of this bar in this place was really easy, no problems at all. But what if we have to install one, for example, in a switch? We need to install a bar here. And we need to install another bar here to keep this gauge at 1000 millimeter and the other gauge at 1000 millimeter. Of course, to install we need to drill 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. And the bar can come in from this side. Spacer bar on it, for the moment no nuts at all. Put the bar in. Here we can put now the nut that comes on this side of this rail. If we go further, we can put the nut on this side of the rail and then tie them together. Game over. Not really, because we can now put on the nut that comes on this side, but here impossible, because of course rails in the way. And that's why these bars are a little bit special, because the diameter here is smaller than the inner diameter of the nut. So we can put the nut on and then slide it, put the bar in place, and then we can slide it back, because this bar of course is moving left, right to the installment. And then when it's in place, we can tie the nut in place and put the other one from the other side. And to make these things, I found out all the material I need. Also, I thought, these are the original nuts used for it. And this is a 1" 8 TPI 55 degrees. So I made my bar 55 degrees. The problem, I have only 3 of these and I have to make a handful of these bars. But I have other nuts, they're a little bit wider. But it's also 1" 8 TPI. So I make my bar and my beautiful big nuts here, I don't fit. Then after a little bit of searching, the thread in here is a 60 degrees and not 55 like the other one, so I had to change. But now that I know it, it will go, of course, way faster. Let's make a spacer bar. And this is the material I'm gonna use. This is 30mm diameter cold roll. I had to buy 30 because this also exists in 25, but 25 is of course too small. I need 25.4, so for 4/10 of millimeter I'm gonna have to chips a lot of it. And the length I need, come on cap, 1160, I think. Yeah. I have to cut it off here. The part I have to make has a length of 1160 millimeter. And my lathe between centers 500 millimeters. That's not gonna work. And that is of course 500 millimeter between points of a dead center here and a dead center here. Between the chuck and the live center I have 420 more or less. 420 two times because I can flip it around is 840. Still too short, which means I have to make this part in several setups. A little bit further in the process I have to take off the tailstock and then my bar will stick out a whole lot here. Now luckily of course the bar goes to the spindle bar. This one is 40mm diameter and my bar is only 30, so that's good. I already installed the cutting tools I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use this insert. It's a finishing insert. It gives less tool pressure because of course this bar is gonna stick out way too far. And I'm gonna use also an insert for aluminium, even less tool pressure, so more better. And of course also my 60-degree thread cutting tool. So now I can pretend that I'm an organized person. But wait, there is more. I also installed all my handles ready to cut a 8 TPI thread. All I have to do is switch this one from single work to double. So I'm gonna leave all these handles as they are. I'm gonna do all my cutting work, and when I start threading, all I have to do, switch this one, set it to double, and cut threads. Efficient. And to prevent too much flex in my workpiece, I will cut this length here in 2 times. I have a little mark. And this is the length of the threaded portion I have to make. So I'm gonna install it in the chuck, just leave out a little bit more than needed. And now I can cut the diameter needed for the threaded part. And then after I will bring it out and cut further away, of course. Over here it is 1/100th undersize. And here it is 1/100th oversize. I think I take it. Right, I'm gonna switch tools. I'm gonna use this 60-degree aluminium insert to make a chamfer here and to start cutting here on this side, because this finishing tool doesn't like to plunge this one much better. I just started to cut the beginning of the smaller portion, of course, of this bar. And this is a tiny bit oversized. Because of plunging in gives more tool pressure than just cutting, I did it this way. And now I will extend my workpiece as far as possible and cut the length I can between the chuck and this part here. And this should be it for step 2, because of course first step was threaded board. Step 2, the smaller portion here for the nut to slide on. And because of it's a long and thin workpiece, I can't put much tool pressure on it, which means my cutting tool also doesn't break the chips, and it gives you this nasty, annoying bird nest idea. But it is what it is. Right, let's take this thing out of here and do the other side. This is the middle of my part, so I have this little part piece left here, and I will of course also have it on the other side. Right, let's install this thing back in the lathe and do this portion. I just finished cutting the other side, and here I would like to show you something. When I cut this portion here that is gonna receive the threads, I did it in one go with the finishing tool, and in the beginning it made not really a rough surface, but matte. And for no reason at all, here it's nice and shiny, and here it becomes matte again. And this finish and this finish is perfectly similar, exactly. So why is this portion nice and shiny and these two aren't? I don't know. And this longer portion here was cut with the insert for aluminium. And here, no problem at all, no difference. Now for this part here, of course, it's not really important. I will give it a touch of sandpaper and then cut the threads and no problem. But I just wanted to show you that sometimes things happen and they're just not according to plan, and it happens. Right, let's take it out of here. So now I have one side ready to receive the threads, and this portion smaller than the other. And of course, other side same. And this middle part I couldn't do. Now what I'm gonna do is take off the no, not the headstock of course, tailstock, and I have a little mark here on my part, and this is more or less the middle of this part I have to cut. I'm gonna put it in a chuck right here and then cut over the middle and then flip it around and do the same. As you can see, there is a bit of wobble in this part, and that is of course because of cutting. It will relieve a bit the stresses inside. Cold roll steel, always lots of stress. So this is a little bit a banana, and the other side too. And to cut it, to prevent it from wobbling and making music, I don't know if you hear it, I have to hold it with my hand. And of course, if you do this, no sleeves, dangerous. This smaller portion of the bar is now finished, and it's time to reinstall the tailstock to have tail support, of course, to start cutting threads. That's nice. A spring pass, maybe two, and a bit of deburring and cleanup, and it will be perfect. And here's the finished product. As you can see, I made 3 of them. And of course, my beautiful little nuts here, they fit. I think we can call this success. And of course, the other nut, when I go past the thread, can slide easily up and down over the whole length. Now, the problem is that these bars will not be installed this week, so I cannot show you the installment. But one day